I recently posted a video showing what builds were no longer viable that I've made over the years and which ones are still going to potentially be viable going forward. Of course, it had legacy gear because it was in standard. I did not even think about the fact that people might still be playing Necropolis. I figured most people had quit Necropolis. So it was these were all standard builds. I made that very clear in the video. And I'm just showing here, I took off the Mageblood, I replaced my replica Dragon Fangs, and got this very good belt instead, this crystal belt. We're going to run 80% delirious because that's what everybody should do to test their build. If a build can't do 80% delirious tier 16s, it's not super viable. And you can see I made a few small changes here, got rid of anything that was legacy, still on standard. Now, does this mean it's 3.25 viable? We don't know yet, and I never officially said that in the last video because we don't have patch notes yet. So who knows? Stormbrand might be nerfed to death again. And if that happens, of course, I will update. Now I have temporal chains right now, which is slowing me down. And of course, taking off the Mageblood, I just have to drink the flask. It's slowing me down quite a bit, and that's the big difference. But still viable. 80% delirious tier 16. Basically same damage. You know, the legacy gear was giving me a helmet enchant. It was giving me a little bit better replica Dragon Fangs rolls on the amulet. And of course, Mageblood, of course, is still going to be around. I don't think they're going to nerf Mageblood, very unlikely. But somebody made it clear in a comment that Mageblood, of course, is very expensive. And so maybe this is not a build that a lot of people would have access to, which is very true. So this is a more beginner-friendly version, Stormbrand of Indecision. Now what I'm showcasing here, a video much longer than normal, is just unedited footage. So you can see how it feels. Brand builds, you throw them, you know, sort of tuck away. You don't go into the middle of the mob. And this is Lightning Conduit. Feels a little slow, mostly because of temporal chains. And again, it is a delirious 80%. If I ran this on a tier 16 without delirious, it would look perfectly smooth and it would look way better. But I want to show that this build is still viable. That was the point of the last video. It was optimized with legacy gear because it's a character in standard. So why wouldn't you? If you want to play standard, you could get access to the full thing. And just to disclaim one last time, 3.25, we don't know the details yet. This build may no longer be viable. But I wanted to update people that found my videos. Hey, should you follow, for example, some of my old Wintertide brands? Well, not really. My old, especially Arcanist brand build. I've updated that multiple times over the years. And it keeps getting nerfed over and over. And first it got nerfed with triggering, needing more mana. You know, the cost of mana with triggering, and then I fixed it again. And then the damage got nerfed, and then I fixed it again, and it's been nerfed to where I don't recommend it. So if you find that kind of build guide, it'll look good in the recording, but that's from the old days, just like Ice Shot back in like 3.17. That was one of my favorite builds of all time. It was incredible. These builds, again, as I said in last video, might require small updates in 3.25. We shall see. But hey, if it can do, you know, this will be able to do modified tier 17. If it can do 80% delirious tier 16s, in my opinion. Just put the Mageblood back on and you'll be super fast. Big difference. As far as movement speed. It's the same cast speed, it's the same damage. Basically. You know, marginally less maybe. More accessible as a League starter with this version. I'll post the POE below. The modified one without a Mageblood setup. Fairly cost-effective version. But Stormbrand of Indecision was nerfed in 3.24. This build was better when it was invented, which was 3.23, I believe. You know, played multiple Stormbrands over the years, but this one, the Stormbrand of Indecision, better for single target. So that's the showcase there. Now we're gonna pop forward. We're gonna pop into this one. The Lightning Flicker Strike. We're going to skip the Cold Flicker Strike because it is tattoo dependent. So you would have to play that in standard only. Unless things change. Now I replaced this ring. That's the only thing I really did here. Lost some chaos. But the reason I did this was you know, in a perfect world, replace lightning res with the chaos. That's what I lost. It's otherwise a very similar ring to what I had. And then, of course, I filled up my my tincture with this, which is really just for shock effect and a little bit of ward, but mostly I'm using the ward flask for shock effect. Now, I got rid of my dex node. That's why I got a ring with more dex. Very similar otherwise, so I could put this on. Monsters cannot block your attacks. This build, remember, was an affliction build. By the way, this could be upgraded too, because my Cold Flicker Strike had all of this, damage per endurance charge, damage per frenzy charge, as an option, critical strike multiplier, but also had extra life. Because we lost the ability to get % extra life on our gloves, and we lost double defense from our body armor, because we lost the Warden of Eve's Ascendancy. So again, made up for it by replacing the tincture with the ward flask, and replace the ring with more dex. Now, this here, not mandatory, same story with Mageblood, right? A focused amulet is horribly expensive. You can see this is very cool and very awesome. I made it myself. But buying the base focused amulet is horribly expensive. That could be replaced with just crit multiplier, life, and just like flat lightning damage. Stuff like that. Crit chance if you want. Flat fizz, you can kind of do, but better to have flat lightning. We want to stack flat lightning everywhere with Flicker Strike because our weapon has no lightning damage. It's a Paradoxica. It's used for double damage. And Elite Penetration. So, without the Warden of Eve's Ascendancy, let's see how it feels. Again, 80% delirious, random out, tier 16. You'll see it's even better, of course, than the Stormbrand, because it's fast. And of course, still viable. Took off anything that might be legacy. It didn't have much legacy gear, because all the legacy gear at the time was Warden of Eve's dependent. The monsters cannot block, replaced with the passive mastery. And amulet, expensive, but not mandatory for the build, if you're on a budget. And of course, we only have 4,000 life, not 4,500, which is a shame. But just showing, because of the damage output, even though we lost the tincture, we replaced it with the extra shock effect. Shock effect, underrated. I always like to scale it a little bit. Doesn't cheat very well, doesn't show up very well on POE. Might not show higher DPS. DPS is a little overrated in my opinion, because there's so many other factors going on. Penetrations, for example. You can see there I did die. Of course, as a Flicker Strike, you do die sometimes, especially now that I don't have the double defense and the life. But the damage is still there. And, you know, if you're not on hardcore, a little bit of deaths, it's not usually a big deal when running high delirious farming. Could this run 100% delirious? I think you'd agree the answer would be yes, based on what you see. Let's go take out Kostas now. That's who killed me. There are only one totem. This is a simplified one totem. Lightning, pure lightning Flicker Strike. A build that's a lot of fun and that I probably will play again, frankly, next league. I was looking at this. I didn't know what it was. The front line. Never really thought about that as an item. So I was checking there. So again, the only thing I did from the last video was get more dex so that I could then get the block back that had been lost, and I did not compensate with life. But of course we have a lot of flat life on our nice focused amulet. So we'll clear out the rest of this map. I'm showing just full map, unedited, so you can see, hey, again, should anybody just copy my builds exactly? I don't think anybody should do that any time, because people have different playstyles. Some people might tap the flask differently or just play differently. I think any build you follow, optimize it and customize it a little bit for your own playstyle and for yourself. And if you're like, oh man, I love this damage, but I'm glass cannon, I keep dying. Well, give yourself some defensive. Give yourself whatever it might be, spell suppression, evasion, armor. Depends on the build. Energy shield recharge, faster start, incredibly helpful. If you're ES based or CI based. So always customize the build to your own liking. Play around with it. Just use my recommendations as a baseline if you're copying my builds or inspired by my builds. Use it as inspiration. Don't just copy. Everybody plays different. Now, I've been playing around with the Spectral Helix all day, and of course it can do tier 16s, but when it comes to 80% delirious tier 16s, it has struggled. I tried replacing the helmet with a Forbidden Shaco setup. I tried using a Blizzard Crown setup. Regardless, I will say that this build is actually not as viable as I thought. And so, I'm not trying to scam anybody. I want everyone to know this Spectral Helix build is actually obsolete. And so I take back what I said yesterday.